as Cellomoji, and I'm here to talk about tips and tools to help you on your cello journey. Hello and welcome to episode number 5 of Cellomoji Chats. So I want you to picture you are starting out to play the cello and you go to the music store and there's this whole range of music books there in front of you, and you might be thinking, what is the best fit for me? What is the best method for me? And today I wanted to talk about 2 popular methods that a lot of cello students go through and talk about the pros and cons of both of them. And so hopefully it will give you a better insight on which might be a better fit for you. Of course, I think when you are starting out cello, I do want to say that having a private instructor to help guide you in the beginning is going to be really important. Regardless of whichever method you choose, to have that beginning guidance to know that you are not forming any bad habits and that your posture and everything is good, that is really important, and that is universal across all the methods. So first, let's talk about going through the Suzuki method books. And this, I think, is really important to know, is that Suzuki method books were not meant to be learned on your own. If you were truly following the traditional Suzuki method, you would have a guiding teacher, you would be in group lessons, you would have a more almost of a community feel to learning the music out of the Suzuki books. However, one of the most convenient things about the Suzuki books is that there's just a whole bunch of songs in them that are progressive in its nature. So every song you learn a new skill, and they kind of compile with every song that you learn, so that ideally by the end of the Suzuki Book series, you should have a whole range of skills and knowledge to go forth and play pretty much almost any piece of music out there. So Suzuki is a method that was created by Shinichi Suzuki. And in the cello method books, there are 10 books. They all have a progressive quality to them. I really love using Suzuki Book 1 because every song in there teaches a new skill, and it is just so helpful, and you can see how it is just a comprehensive Book 1 book. However, I would not necessarily recommend going through Suzuki Book 1 if you have never experienced anything in the music world before. So if you've never played piano, if you've never seen bass clef before, and even for those of you starting out on cello, it can be quite challenging to just learn these on your own. The thing about it is there are a lot of overlapping beginner songs across method books, but the Suzuki books are very particular about how they put in bowings and how they put in fingerings. There is actually like a cello meeting basically of cello teachers, and they review the books every so often to make sure that the learning progression is still comprehensive and it makes sense. And oftentimes they'll sometimes edit the order of things or take out pieces of music or put in different pieces of music. So it is important to know that like the things that you see in them are not necessarily just like suggestions or just kind of sort of playing through the song. You really want to pay attention to all those details. The Suzuki books also have piano accompaniment books, so you can have an accompanist play with you. They also come sometimes with CD recordings where you can listen to the music and hear what it sounds like, and then go forth and try to recreate that for yourselves. Some of the recordings I have found are a little bit too fast at first, so sometimes it's hard to catch a lot of the things. So I started doing on my own YouTube channel, creating a play through this song in slow-mo, just so that students who are starting out learning the songs can actually get a chance to actually hear what is going on. So if you are learning through some of the Suzuki songs and you are not sure what things should sound like, you can go later and check out my YouTube channel. It's just youtube.com/cellomoji, and I'll be sure to also leave that in the links below. So let's talk a little bit about Essential Elements. Essential Elements is by a company, Hal Leonard, and I love Hal Leonard Company because they are truly trying to be educational and help students who are learning instruments learn a whole range and variety of different pieces of music. And Essential Elements is one of the most common methods I find within the school programs because across the instruments, everybody's playing the same song. Everybody's playing the same or learning kind of the same techniques around the same time. Essential Elements also has an interactive part of it as well too. They now have online downloads of accompaniments that you can go through, and I've been covering a lot of the Essential Elements also on my YouTube channel because I find that especially over this past couple years when kids were not in school and did not have that interaction, they often would kind of struggle with learning the songs. So I was trying to cover a lot of the things online, and I find that Essential Elements is also a very thorough, popular method to go through. There are essentially just 2 books, and then you can go into the more advanced, like Essential Technique and the Advanced Techniques. So I guess in total there are 4 books, but essentially Essential Elements 1 is kind of a slower progression than the Suzuki Book 1. So essentially Suzuki Book 1, you are staying all in first position. You're not moving around. You're learning a lot of the basics. But Essential Elements, you are also doing that for Book 1 and a good chunk of Book 2 as well. They're already introducing extensions and more complex bowings in the Suzuki Book 1, but Essential Elements, they're spending a good chunk to make sure that you understand how to read the notes on the staff and how to do certain notes and rhythms. One method book is not necessarily better than the other. Personally, when I am teaching privately individual students, I tend to go through the Suzuki method books. I am a Suzuki trained teacher, so I know best how to utilize these books to help teach the skills. Now, I know plenty of teachers who are not Suzuki trained who use the Suzuki books because, like I said, they have a great compilation of a lot of the beginner songs. But I do feel that getting a little bit of training in it, you can really get the most out of every single song there. And you'll notice a huge improvement with your students and also your own teaching style. Now, if I was in a school where I'm doing more group class teaching, I probably would tend a little bit more towards Essential Elements. And that would also depend also on the background of some of the students. Oftentimes when I'm teaching, I find that a lot of kids have been exposed to either playing piano or playing another instrument, and then they wanted to change over to cello. And for those students, Essential Elements might be painfully slow for them because it is literally holding your hand step by step through every single note. So in that case, maybe I might use the Suzuki methods right away. But there are also students who I teach who have never been exposed to any sort of music thing at all, and they just really wanted to learn how to play the cello. And in that case, we might start out with Essential Elements just so they can get used to knowing what they're even looking at. And for those of you who are kind of trying to do the self-teaching route, which, let's be real here, a lot of people I know out there are definitely trying to do that. Essential Elements is one that I would definitely recommend you take a look at because it will make sure that you are covering all your bases, that there's like pictures in there. There's basically step-by-step instructions on how to play certain things, and that interactive element of it where you can listen to accompaniments and listen to how these exercises are being played. I think that is just a great bonus for the essential elements. So I guess when it comes to picking a method, you should really kind of assess, where are you starting out from? So do you have a musical background? Have you played music before? Are you comfortable looking at things at bass clef? Then maybe you might want to consider starting into the Suzuki Method books. But if you are really struggling to look at things in bass clef, or you're not quite sure, is that note right, or is that rhythm right, or you want kind of a more step-by-step slow progress through things, then essential elements would be definitely one that I would recommend. Now, I think after a while you will notice that there are other pieces of music you'd like to play, and there is a little bit of a progression, I feel, of learning step by step through different pieces so that you can essentially play any piece you want later on. But to say that you're going to start playing the Bach Prelude Suite 1, which pretty much every cello player I know wants to learn how to play, while you're still trying to progress through Suzuki Book 1, is really stretching things. I think it's there's a lot of other techniques that you need to master before you can do this. But either method, you can have this progression through things, and while it may be a different timing, it'll be your timing. And that's the most important thing, is it is not a race. You don't have to rush to learn everything, but you really do want to learn thoroughly. And the cons of some of these books is that in the beginner books, and this is for both methods and pretty much every other beginner book I know, you'll find that there are finger numbers over every single note. This includes all the notes that are even just your open strings on your cello. And one of the things I can highly recommend is, please learn to read the notes on the staff. Do not depend on finger numbers, because the worst thing you can do is you're going into quote unquote real music. So this is just individual pieces of music that are not classified in any method book, and there are no numbers on there. And then all of a sudden you'll find that you'll be questioning yourself, like, how do I read this book? What are these notes? Where are they located? And each method book will totally make you look at the same notes over and over again. So it's a little bit of a memory game, and I really encourage you to take the time to really read the notes on the staff. One of the best things that I recommend for all cello students is to be able to sit down with your book of music and be able to read the music like a book. So you're going through and you're saying like A, D, E, F, G, and going through all of these things and being able to feel confident knowing what note you're trying to play. And you will find that mastering different pieces of music will be so much easier. Now, Suzuki method and essential elements are definitely not the only methods out there. I have to put that out there. I mean, there are so many other methods. Plus, there seems to be new ones coming out all the time as well. I don't think one method is superior to another. I just think that it is important to make sure that whichever method book you are using, that you are finding answers to your questions. And if you have any questions that aren't being answered, you can always feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to answer them. I think there is nothing worse than trying to go through and guesstimating when you are trying to learn to master the cello. Nothing is a substitute for a good cello setup, knowing how to read the notes, having a good foundation to be able to play anything will really set you up for success. And if you're learning cello on your own, one book is not superior to the other, like I said earlier. So buy both of them. Take a look at both of them. If you wanted more practice on how to play certain notes or how to play things in first position, they are both a great complement to each other. And I am teaching in schools this year where they are using a combination of both. They're kind of mixing up a whole bunch of beginner music and putting them in their binders. So it's a whole mix of different pieces of music. So just because you start out with one method doesn't mean that you have to be exclusive and only stay in that. If there are any cello books out there that I should check out or you think are great for beginners, or you're curious if this fits my level, feel free to leave me a comment, reach out to me and let me know what you think of these things, because I think out there in the music world, there is so much music that can help you on your cello journey. It's just a matter of knowing, is this going to be a good fit for me? Will I be able to do this without tearing my hair out trying to play these pieces of music? And that's something important just to assess for yourself, as well as hopefully having a teacher help guide you along as well. So there was some comments and notes about using the Suzuki cello books and also using the Essential Elements cello books as well. Hopefully this gave you a little bit more guidance and clarity in terms of what book might be best for you when you are starting out cello. And always keep in mind, be flexible, keep an open mind. You can always try things from both of them and see which one you like better. One is definitely not necessarily better than the other. It just has maybe a different progression rate. Thanks so much for listening to this episode talking about two very popular cello method books that beginner cello players often use. I hope that you found this episode helpful and hopefully a little bit insightful looking into these books, especially if you're in a store and you're just trying to pick which one is the best one for you. If you found this podcast helpful, I would love it and totally appreciate it if you could pop on over to Apple Podcasts and leave me a review and let me know how I'm doing. By leaving a review, it really helps this podcast out so much and will help bring this podcast to more listeners who are on the same cello journey as you. Check out the show notes for any links that I might have mentioned before, and I'll also leave links to the books so that you can check them out yourself. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, guys, cello on.